It is the penultimate episode prior to Christmas. So welcome into In Goal Radio, the podcast. I'm Darren Millard, along with the co-founders of In Goal Magazine, Kevin Woodley and David Hutchison. We are gearing up for the holiday season. And when I say the second last show, which is a lot easier to phrase than penultimate, but hey, we delivered it. I'm talking about gift ideas, and we've got a lot going on around the world of goaltending, and we'll get into what happened with the Calgary Flames and expanding their goaltending department, a transaction in the NHL world, and of course, the World Junior Championships on the horizon. We will talk with the goaltending coach of Team Canada, who is also part of a development with the Calgary Flames. So it all kind of ties in together today. But before we get into it, let's talk about gift ideas and what people can deliver under the tree in this close time frame going to the holiday season. Hutch?
Well, of course, they can get an In Goal Magazine subscription for their very favorite goaltender or many of their favorite goaltenders. Santa will deliver those right up to, well, Christmas Day. If you forget to buy a Christmas present and you wake up in a panic, cold sweat, get a gift subscription to In Goal. But more importantly, head over to ingoalmag.com. Much like our reviews, Kevin has put together a fantastic gift guide of pretty much all really affordable options for giving to a goaltender. And like all our reviews, it's wide open. Anybody can read it. It's not just for our members. We'd love you to stop by and see. So things like Maria Mountain, who's been a good friend of In Goal's for years, some of her programs, great thing you could get a goaltender that will, serve them all year long. Of course, you got a lot of beer league goaltenders listening to this podcast, reading In Goal. Some of the BHLPA stuff there from our good friend KVG. You might want to check that out. Vintage goalie swag. Of course, as we'll learn again today, a visit to our friends at the hockey shop is in order. Mask wraps, masks, because we are all still social distancing from our buddy over at Goalie Gear Nerd. VR training. If you're not into buying the whole VR kit, we've got the Skills Ball Machine. Some great books, because we spoke to people like Shannon Sabados recently. All sorts of great programs available there. Art, mental training. Really, look, check it out. There's all sorts of links, all sorts of gifts. If you're feeling stumped on something you can do for a goaltender, really suggest you check it out.
And you can also head over to the hockey shop, thehockeyshop.com, source for sports Surrey. I mean, they're still open right up until the final days to Christmas.
Yeah, absolutely. I got to say, though, Darren, when Hutch described that panic and cold sweat of waking up on Christmas morning without having purchased your gift, did it feel to you like maybe there was some personal experience involved there?
Definitely. That was autobiographical.
Maybe Christmas Eve. Maybe Christmas Eve I get the panics. I don't think I've ever gone straight to Christmas Day, but I could imagine it happening.
Oh, come on. What guy hasn't got to Christmas Eve without the gift? I think that's part of the DNA.
Union, yeah.
Is the hockey shop a hot source for sports Surrey open on Christmas Eve, or like right down to it? You don't want to be cutting it that close. I mean, Cecil's not sharpening skates until 9:00 on Christmas Eve.
No, but we could probably give out Cam's home number just in case anybody has any questions. Send everyone over to Cam.
1212 area
Cam
code
can't
604.
remember the 1-800 number, but I can remember his cell number.
On a serious note, guys, as much as we're probably approaching, and we'll talk about it in the gear segment coming up with Cam from the hockey shop, we are kind of approaching a cutoff quickly for them in terms of shipping and getting it there for December 25th. As Hutch said, there are a lot of items on our Christmas gift buying guide that you can get right up until Christmas Eve. Obviously, the best one, of course, is ingoalmag.com, InGoal Premium subscription. But let's be honest, it's not all about putting gifts under the tree or stuffing the stocking of your favorite goaltender. There can always be a little selfishness in those purchases. And even if the hockey shop can't quite get everything to everyone in time for Christmas, they can still make you feel better with a little retail therapy. And a lot of their sales that started on Black Friday still continue on. There are still some really good deals on some really good items. We talked about the composite sticks last week for as low as, I think the Bauer one was $72 and the CCM Premier 2.5 was just $65 Canadian for a composite stick. A lot of deals like that, still some stock remaining. So again, if you don't have time, like I said, you might not be able to get it for the person on your gift list, but you can always get it for yourself, a little New Year's present. Head over to the Hockey Shop, thehockeyshop.com, for all your personal gift buying needs after Christmas, as well as keep an eye on them for all next year's inventory. We're going to start rolling that out in the new year in terms of what's going to be new for 2021.
That is outstanding, and there's a lot to sort through on that list. It's beautiful, and it kind of goes, hey, I'd like that. I'd like that. That's my impression of me. Oh, I'd really like a couple of those when I sorted through that long list over at In Goal Magazine. We will get to the news of the day, and that is the Calgary Flames announcing a new goalie department. We will save that for just a little bit because it's a big part of our feature interview presented by Sense Arena VR. And we chat with Jordan Singalette and Jason LaBarbera. And Jordan and Jason have worked sort of side by side in the same building, and now they're coming together with the Calgary Flames. So really interesting transaction and development on the goaltending front with the Calgary Flames and general manager Brad Treliving. But on the other side, we have the Minnesota Wild announcing both a signing and an injury, Woody. And do these go hand in hand with Andrew Hammond coming on board with the Minnesota Wild?
Yeah, and it sounds like Alex Daylock's going to be out for a while, indefinitely was the word on their release today. And that's too bad because he obviously had a really good second half last year, took over the number one job. And Cam Talbot's going to be the guy there. But in a year where you're probably going to need more than one, there would have still been an opportunity for Alex to play a big role. And one of the nicer guys around the league too. So anytime and a guy who's overcome a serious injury before. So hopefully it's not that bad. I don't want to overstate the nature of it because we're not, we don't know the intimate details, but the fact they had to go out and make this signing tells you that, they're at least going to be missing him for some time. They've got Kaapo Kähkönen in there as well, the highly touted prospect, AHL goalie of the year last year, so he'll get an opportunity to play as well. But just kind of a tough break for a guy who has had tough breaks before and overcome them in a year where you're probably going to need to play both your guys, that he might not be that option for them early on. So thoughts with Alex Daylock, who extremely popular in that locker room and one of the guys that we love to talk to. We had that he took us into the stick room when Minnesota was here earlier last season before the pause, and showed us how he tapes up his stick and how he has the notch cut out of it, and explained why to us, and talked to us about how he was thinking about maybe getting a curve just for empty net opportunities, like a power play stick for a sniper. You go get that one off the bench that you can clear over top of the penalty killers and get it down the ice for an empty net opportunity late in the game. So I think to me that just shows you the kind of personality he has, and we obviously cheer for guys like that. So hopefully he's back sooner rather than later. And to be honest, an opportunity for Andrew Hammond, another guy that we've had some good experiences with in the past, and everybody knows the Hamburglar run, and he ran into some injuries after that. So it'll be good for him to get an opportunity as well. And like I said, Talbot's going to be the guy, but it'll be interesting to see now how it shakes out behind him with Hammond and Kähkönen while Stalock gets healthy.
I'm really eager to see Kähkönen play in the National Hockey League for a nice little run. I'd like to witness that. Stalock's a upper body injury, so that goes hand in hand with the report that it could be out a while. And Hammond is a two-way deal, so just a little bit of housekeeping on the transaction with the Minnesota Wild. Just pick up on the empty net stick. Would you guys risk going with a curve that's slightly illegal if you're going to go hard and go all the way to adopting an empty net stick? Would you push the envelope on the curve and risk being called on it?
I don't think there is I don't think that rule is there anymore, Darren. I hate to say it, but yeah, no, seriously. What? I think the illegal curve rule's been gone for a while. So you can banana curve it if you want.
Goalies are allowed to curve.
No, the players rule changed.
Yes. No,
and there's a more allowance, but they can't go full like 80s like Dr. Crack and hook on that thing. Hutch is now Googling away. He's going to prove us wrong here, Darren.
Yeah, no way the players. Look at he's on the computer.
He's on it.
He's looking at it. He's Googling. He may have got some bad advice from
There's a referee over my shoulder.
His young son behind him. and his young son chirps him as a referee. There's like Marty McSorley would run down there and tell them, you're never changing that rule because I got caught for it. And goaltenders, for sure.
Yeah, you might be right. Somebody here is saying it's been relaxed from a 1/2 inch curve to 3/4 inch curve. So regardless, that's a pretty big bend.
It's hard to see it on the it's hard for the listeners to see it, but I'm flexing right now. Actually, the truth is, even if you could see me,
well, when was the last time somebody got called on one? That would be the interesting question.
I've never heard of a goalie being called for an illegal curve,
but I don't know that. I can't remember the last time a player was.
And well, it's not as common nowadays because guys aren't doing it themselves, so you don't have that day to day. I might try a little bit more
with
of a bend,
the composites
at the stick rack. They're all composite. They all come pre-curved. But would you guys risk throwing a little bit of a bigger curve on your goalie stick trying to go for the empty netter?
Well, in beer, what are they going to do in beer league?
Yeah.
Hey, come on. There's nothing legal about any of my equipment.
If I had a big enough curve, I might be able to get it on the top of the circles instead of just
I was just going to say the reality is I'm not getting it past the blue line. So
I'm with you on that. The worst part would be we'd all be tempted to do it and our teammates would hate us because we'd be hitting them in the shoulders or the shins or the pants all the time instead of at the stick. So there's just a sideways little detour. So we're also keeping track of the World Junior Hockey Championships, and there's been major disruptions to the players and coaches and everybody leading up to this tournament because of some positive tests and really affected Team Sweden. But the good news is, if you can find the silver lining, Hutch, is none of the goaltenders we expected to see, anticipated to see, were sidetracked because of a positive test. We're going to see those that were predicted to be there.
Yeah, so far so good. We know that there's some teams hoping that we come out the other side of the quarantine here, this short 4-day quarantine, to make sure that everybody's healthy before we head into the championship. So knock on wood. I hope that you're right about that, Darren. And we've got the prospects here of one of the best tournaments in a long time in terms of the talent that's potentially available there. And just really looking forward to seeing what some of these guys can do. And as I've said before on here, I'm fascinated to see how this is going to play out when we look at the guys that have been playing overseas. You've got a season in, we've got guys coming straight out of the KHL, compared to the Canadian kids who haven't seen a game yet. It's going to be fascinating, and but I think it might also be surprising for all of us. So this could be one of the most interesting tournaments we've had in a long time. And of course, we've got no hockey over here to watch at all. So it's going to, all eyeballs will be on it come Christmas Day. Really looking forward to what happens.
Yeah, some massive names. Askarov, obviously, just drafted 11th overall by the Predators. Spencer Knight with another year at the World Juniors, 13th overall to the Florida Panthers the year before. Dustin Wolf will be there with him on the U.S. team, a kid that we've had had as a guest, and just an exceptional young man and a hell of a goaltender. Overseas as well from Finland, you've got Blomqvist, who a lot of people, I know some NHL goalie people had him ahead of Askarov. You've got Alnefelt, the highly regarded Tampa Bay prospect, and behind him is Jesper Wallstedt, who I think most people expect to be the first goaltender picked in next year's draft. So I'm really excited to see him. So the good news is none of those guys got sick. Knock on wood. They're all in quarantine right now. They're all going to come out of it unscathed and be able to play in the tournament. The bad news for those two Swedes is they're not going to have a goalie coach, because Sweden's goalie coach was one of the ones that tested positive. Their coaching staff was hard hit. They were able to replace some parts of their coaching staff, but last time I checked, because of the rules, they weren't able, because of the window and the time frame that the illness occurred, they weren't able to add new people in terms of replacing the goalie coach. So the Swedish guys, and listen, we talked to LaBarbera. We talked to him later on here in the feature interview, and talked to him at length about this. Like, when we talk about what makes the World Juniors, it's that so good and so entertaining sometimes is the emotions of these kids. Like, they can get, it's less controlled than, say, an NHL environment, and the highs and lows and the momentum swings can be so massive. And having an NHL voice or having a goalie coaching voice to help you through that from a goalie coaching perspective can be a big thing. So, the Swedish guys, other than maybe some video conferencing, are going to be on their own a little bit there. So that's a bit of a challenge for them. The other thing, guys, a little bit of a little scoop for you guys. You know what might look different when this starts? All these awesome, wicked-looking gear sets we've seen for the different countries from Bauer and CCM over the past couple of weeks?
I know where you're going, Woody. I know where you're going.
Yeah.
Some of these are going to look a little different when you see them on television because, and we were aware of this, what not a lot of people realize is that the various federations have deals with different equipment companies. And so within those deals, you are limited in what you can do in terms of using the Federation logo on the pads with your own logo. CCM in the past has not been able to use, for example, we saw the CCM graphics come out, right, with all the different countries.
Yep.
Notice how the Canadian players didn't have one. Well, part of the reason there is you can't use the Hockey Canada logo. Bauer has that exclusively. Bauer also has the American logo, so that's why Dustin Wolf's didn't have a USA Hockey logo on it anywhere. It had a flag, had Captain America theme, but didn't have a USA Hockey logo. Well, on the flip side of that, it sounds like CCM is exercising some of its rights in terms of the European teams it does have affiliations with, some of whom had already received gear from Bauer, including Swedish goaltenders with the Tre Krona on it. The 3 crowns worked into the design. And so technically, you can't have that and a Bauer or on a Bauer pad, or at least have the Bauer logo. Now, here's where my understanding where this is going to go, and I give full marks to Bauer on this. Rather than making these kids cover up the logos and the Federation logos, which, let's be honest, would call quite a bit of attention to the issue and maybe even put some people on their side and say, why would another company do this and make them do it? And put the kids in the position of wearing ugly pads, it sounds like Bauer has created color-matched patches and will sacrifice their own logos on the gear, cover up the Bauer, and in a way that matches, not like, sometimes like Bryans and Vaughn don't have IIHF licensing. So you'll see like the black patch over the Vaughn logo sometimes.
Yuri Patera a couple of years ago had that big patch on the side. Yeah.
Come on, boys. We're in the era of pad skins. I realize it calls attention to your gear and makes people think about it, but just cover the logo in a matching color. Sorry. That looks better for the kid. That's what Bauer's going to do. So full marks to them. So when you see all this gear that we've seen on the internet in the next couple of days or couple of weeks, it'll be subtle, but it'll probably be missing that Bauer logo. Some people might not even notice it. But I think I fully understand you need to enforce your rights on both sides of the equation, both with the Hockey Canada and USA and now with the European. But I just love the way, rather than punishing the kids, they're going to cover their own logo and sacrifice their own logo and not have it be a part of certain sets of equipment so that the kids still get to wear a design that overall is going to be pretty hot and it's not going to look funky because they've had to cover something else. So a little bit of an insight there. And for those that are wondering, those that will notice why things are different when we start to see this gear again coming out of the quarantine, there's your explanation.
Wow. So that's something to watch for when the exhibition games do start, and they will be highly viewed exhibition games because we don't have any other hockey going right now on national television in both Canada and the United States. Going back to that tournament in Vancouver when Patera did that and blacked out the side of his pad, I thought, geez, that almost draws more attention and makes me wonder what pad that was. So I actually wondered if they were doing that on purpose, but probably not. But that was my little,
Yeah, and I think most people would assume that's the IIHF, not the specific countries, which I think Woody digging that up is a really interesting point for all of us. I think a lot of people are learning something here, Woody.
Well, no, I mean, like it's the IIHF rule. It's the IIHF rule that prevents a company like Vaughn or Bryans from having their logo displayed. But it's your choice.
But I mean, in terms of the ones that are dealing with federations as well, I think not everybody realized that there's 2 layers to this, right?
Had no idea.
Yeah, there is. And then in terms of for the ones that where it's just straight IIHF, like I just I never thought of it before because I'm with you, Darren. Like it does draw more attention to it. And as a company, you're like, yeah, hey, we didn't have to pay the rights fees, and everybody's asking if that's our gear. Although I think most goalies sort of know who's, what a pad looks like and what company it is. And I just thought that, I'd never thought of it before, but really honestly, in an era of color match pad skins, you can cover that logo up without calling that much attention to it. And at a time when, we talk about look good, feel good, play good, I just, like I said, I think Bauer deserves tap on the pads, a pat on the back for doing it in a way than rather than saying, look at us, or we got screwed or whatever. They just said, we want these pads to look as good as possible. We'll sacrifice our logo, and we want the kids to look as good as possible. I just think it's a smart play, to be honest with you.
Just like us, we call each other out, not to look good and feel good, but just to make fun of each other. We sacrifice ourselves just to make fun of each other. That's the way we roll around In-Goal Magazine and In-Goal.
As we should.
Right.
By the way,
boys, the podcast.
Hey, just a little update on that. I'm looking at the Hockey Canada rule book right now.
Yeah? That's different than the NHL.
Quote, well, true. But, quote, there is not a stick curvature measurement limitation to be enforced.
So in minor hockey, you can do whatever you want with a curve.
100%. Yeah, as if you probably couldn't anyway, right? With composite, as we've said. But yeah, so the referee over my shoulder was correct, and you guys were correct about the NHL, I'm sure, as well. So it's a win-win.
So just except for you in the middle who boggled the whole thing up.
I'm just a complete mess, and I'm just reading the web like everybody else. So
you were so excited, though. That's what I liked.
Well, I'm still half right.
You can't take back the excitement that we listened to and heard from you.
I still got a little bit over you, boys, just a little bit. But I didn't even get it. I was just passing it on. So I'm not even bright. I'm just onto it.
One thing's for sure, we have to pull up our pants, and we'll do that right now with a visit to the Hockey Shop, thehockeyshop.com, a source for sports Surrey, as we profile the Vaughn V9 Pro Carbon with a little hangout with Cam as Woody makes a trip out to Surrey.
Welcome back to the Hockey Shop Source for Sports out here in beautiful Surrey, British Columbia, the outskirts of Vancouver, or for those of you not blessed enough to live on the West Coast with Cam and I, thehockeyshop.com for all your goaltending needs. We are down in Goalie Utopia with Cam Matwiv, surrounded by all this magnificent goalie gear. A little less goalie gear than last time, thanks to a spectacular Black Friday sale. And I'm guessing there'll be even less by the time we hit Christmas, as people that are nearby, and maybe some of you that live within a few provinces can still get shipping on Christmas items to stuff that last minute gift under the tree. So make sure you hit Cam up if you got any questions about the shipping deadlines. We'll do that at the beginning, Cam. Where can they hit you up if they're curious if they can still get, before we get into this week's featured gear, where can they hit you up to find out, hey, I really need a stick, I really need skates, can I get it in time to get it under the tree?
604-589-8299. Just give me a call.
Have you figured out the 1-800 number yet, or?
Stuart, no.
So we'll flash that little 1-800 number on the screen. Hutch, work your magic. For those that are wondering why we're talking about a screen, of course, we're now about 8 weeks into doing this on a simulcast. Thanks to everyone who's been watching the gear segment on especially Instagram, IGTV, averaging a little over 10 to 15,000 a week in views. So that's been kind of cool. Cam's head still fits through doors despite that growth. So it's been great. Now, back to our regularly scheduled program. We took a little break there for some Christmas gift ideas, some Black Friday ideas. We're back into pants. And we're going to hit it up. The Vaughn V9 Pro Carbon kind of follows nicely. We wrapped up the chest protectors with the Vaughn V9 Pro Carbon. We're going to start with the pants. For those of you who are watching on the simulcast, you'll notice that I am actually wearing the pants because I get into this, like dress up. This is like Halloween for me. Didn't get to go trick-or-treating, so I come into the hockey shop, try on all the gear, annoy Cam, make sure there's lots of stuff he has to put back on the wall when we leave. And that includes wearing the Vaughn V9 Pro Carbon pants for the first time. Velocity Pro Carbon. I got to say, they're pretty, they feel, Cam, like a traditional pant in terms of fit and style. Like I haven't got an inner belt here. They just sort of, there's a lot of mobility. Walk me through what the new features are, what this pant is known for, what the feedback has been.
Yeah, the word like a gym short fit kind of comes to mind a little bit when you said that. So your description of feeling very mobile is correct right off the bat.
I'm going to be honest with you. That's not the description I was looking for. I'm quite glad you didn't play dress up because I don't want to see you in your gym shorts.
Gym shorts. Well, that's good. Then you're good. You pass. That said, the pant itself, a bit more of a tapered fit, something that we haven't seen from Vaughn before. They're falling in line with what the NHL legal rule is for pant width in terms of the actual barrel. So they're actually a rounded 9-inch molded thigh barrel as opposed to a 10-inch, which we saw on the previous pant in the VE8 and also for a lot of the other ones that are on the wall in particular.
Yeah, and you'll see those reviews in the coming weeks. We've talked about the CCM and the Bauer have gone to, or in some cases stuck with, a 10-inch leg, so just a little bit wider through the thighs and around the leg. Now, that said, it's NHL legal. It's a little bit smaller. It's a little more rounded and tapered, but I still feel like, there's room in here, not just in terms of movement and mobility, but there's room to still tuck in a knee pad underneath.
Correct. Yeah, they still cut it out enough to still amalgamate with that wider style of a knee pad. A nice feature of Vaughn pants in particular, too, is that they do come with a tie on the inside of the actual thigh itself, so you can actually tie your knee pads into the pant themselves. In particular, it's just a leather tab for those of us that can't see.
Tab with some lace holes.
Yeah, so just a nice little quick added feature there. Another way to wear your knee pads. One of the things that they did also change from the VE8 pant was how the crotch line of the pant actually integrates. So they've added more of that neoprene stretch material basically in the center of the crotch. This allows easier integration, especially for those guys that are wearing those big double cups and whatnot. So that it won't interfere with the pant as you're moving around. So it creates a little bit of extra space in the forward front of the pant.
I'm glad you mentioned double, and for some of us, triple cups. In the NHL, most guys are wearing sort of player or, sort of sport athletic cup underneath, and then a goalie double cup over top of that. I'm also glad you mentioned that's why you needed the neoprene. There were so many jokes to be made there about that extra stretchy material. I'm going to leave those. Moving to the inside of the pant, as I mentioned at the beginning, some of the other pants that we've looked at or are going to look at here on the gear segment coming up, have inner belts.
Yes.
This one doesn't. Again, keeping with NHL spec, you can't have an inner belt in the National Hockey League. So this is more along the lines of an NHL spec pant, but it looks like some pretty easy traditional attachments for suspenders. For those of you who, what I like about inner belts is it allows you to sort of cinch the inside and have that barrel on the outside. For this pant, do you need to cinch it up sort of using the belts that run around? Like, do you have to tie it tight around the waist? And if that's the case, is it harder to tuck with this compared to, like, is this a pant where you would normally untuck?
You can do both with it. And now, again, that word preference kind of comes back into play, which we've talked about so many times before. The waist itself is stiff enough to accommodate that chest inside, for example. But what I do see this pant a little bit more is that when you do torque it down, it definitely tapers in the waist. I think a little bit more for that untucked guy.
So it's a little more form-fitting.
Correct.
Do these pants make my hips look big? Probably not.
I don't think it was the pants.
Probably not. So less of a barrel around an inner belt and more, like you said, more tapered. But you can still stuff a chest protector on the inside of it and then pull it tight.
Correct.
And of course, as we said, probably, it's not like it's falling down on me here. Even with these cinched tight, you can probably quite easily attach and use a suspender system to keep it up.
Yes, exactly.
Because we don't want to be like the kids with them pants falling down all the time, not when we're on the ice.
No, we don't want that.
Any other features? What's been the feedback on this model?
Good protection overall. Again, those familiar with Vaughn pants, is not too much of a departure from what you've been previously used to. Again, the biggest thing, though, is moving to those 9-inch barrels. Lightweight air mesh liner throughout the pant. Keeps it breathable, makes it lightweight as well.
It is really light, noticeably light. When you put it on, like I said, the two things that do jump to mind is I'm not sweating right now. It's a pretty light pant, even though we're indoors and I'm wearing a goalie pant. And the mobility just moving around and standing up in it is, it feels like a pant that we just got off the wall, but it feels like it's something I've worn for a while and is broken in quite easily.
Yes, that bread and butter Vaughn fit in that sense. So,
okay, the one thing I did notice too, though, with the 9-inch barrel pant leg being a little tighter, and the fact that the inner padding isn't removable like we've seen on some other models. Could you fit a full, I guess NHL legal still fits under here, but you might have to be a little careful with some of the max size knee pads sort of sliding in and out underneath this?
Not as much necessarily, because one thing is that the back of the pant is actually quite a bit wider, or in terms of how it's cut. So even though it looks thinner up front,
It'll still open up.
You have a lot of travel room in the back to be able to accommodate for that bigger style of a knee pad.
Okay, there we go. Vaughn V9 Pro Carbon Pant. Cam, thanks for walking us through this line. Stick with us, folks, as we continue to make our way through pant models from CCM, Bauer, and Warrior.
Awesome job. Your hips did look a little bit bigger. I don't know whether that's the season sneaking up on you or not, but well done with the pants. And I have a question. The inner belt thing. Some pants have the inner belt. Some pants don't have the inner belt. These ones didn't, the Vaughn ones, right?
Right.
Okay, and in the NHL, you're not allowed to have the inner belt.
Illegal.
Correct.
Okay. Why not?
Okay. So, and here's the thing. Like, the reality is, like, I'm an inner belt guy. I like inner belts. But that's because I'm not a suspender guy. If you have suspenders, you don't really need the inner belt. Like, they kind of, you don't need both. But the reason it's illegal in the National Hockey League is what the inner belt allows you to do is tighten things up around your waist and keep the pant in place, but not tighten up the pant around your waist, if it makes sense. You're tightening up that inner belt to get the fit, but the pant stays at its maximum width in terms of that barrel shape. Whereas if the belt is around the pant itself and you tighten it up, just like me tightening up my golf pants after losing a couple of pounds, which never actually happens. But when you tighten up the belt from the outside, everything cinches in tighter, right? So you actually make things smaller. Whereas with an inner belt, you can tighten things without cinching the pant up and making it smaller. You can maintain that nice big barrel around the belt. You don't affect the size or the width or the presentation of the pant, despite tightening how it fits on you. That's the advantage there.
So in the NHL, everybody would use suspenders.
Well, not every. I mean, I think most do, but the reality of the NHL is you don't have to tighten your pants from the outside. But the reality of the NHL is if you want your pants to be tightened at all, it has to be done from the outside, not the inside. You can't tighten the inner belt and let the pant hang loose. That's kind of the point. They're like the suspenders give you another way around it, I guess, is what I'm saying. But
to
with
a point,
the inner belt, guys were able to get away with a lot more. I mean, there were guys that, quite frankly, without naming names, there were guys where you would see them getting out of their pants and they were sticking out 3-4 inches on either side before they cracked down on the rules. That's just the reality of it.
And I think that was a surprise to me when I first saw a bunch of guys in NHL rooms that even I've been on the ice even last summer with a bunch of major junior kids who have those pants cinched up real tight from the outside because they don't have the inner belt either. And then you go in an NHL room and these guys have them as wide open as they can possibly get them. They've got skate lace replacing those inner laces so they can let it bag out as far as they possibly can to get. And maybe this will end up being a gear tip on In Goal Premium at some point. But there's also another way that you can lace in those suspenders that we saw Carey Price do, because even now, if you put suspenders on because of where they attach to the pants, they can have they can make a difference in pulling in the width of those pants if you're wearing suspenders relatively tightly as to where they attach on the pants. So we saw Carey have a little bit of a different way of doing them up, and we'll share some photos and some tips on how to do that over on Premium at some point, Woody.
Yeah, and you know what? I actually, as much as it's about that overall size of the pant, in terms of, I kind of missed a big one here, Darren. One of the real specific reasons when they actually made the change to remove inner belts being part of the pants in the National Hockey League was, and this is a nice tease for a guest we've got coming up. We are going to have Francois Allaire on the podcast in the next couple of weeks. So big tease there to one of the all-timers in the goalie coaching.
Well, you've got all kinds of nuggets today.
Yeah, well, Francois Allaire and Jean-Sébastien Giguère were kind of targeted because what the inner belt allowed them to do, what they did was they created an integration with the chest protector and the pant. And the third part of that was the pants to the knees. And it was a fixed relationship. So a sort of fixed tie-in between the knees and the pants. So picture this. I drop to my knees. The knee pads hit my pads. They push my pants up. My pants are attached to an inner belt. So now my pants can stay attached at a fixed point, but the inner belt allows the outside of my pants to move up and down as I drop. So when I drop, the pants pop up. If my chest protector is tied and fixed to that edge of the pants, effectively I create one piece that pops up when I drop to the ice. So as I drop to the ice, my pants pop up and it pushes my chest protector up over my shoulders and can create an extra inch plus of coverage. So it wasn't just the inner belt in terms of making sure guys cinched it in a little bit more and kept things tighter around their waist from that presentation. It was this sort of integrated system that was brilliantly done that allowed sort of you to create a link between hitting the ice and your chest protector actually rising and increasing in its coverage.
Like a lever.
I mean, in some ways, yeah, like it was kind of one piece and it all shifted up with that inner belt. Like it was freaking brilliant and it wasn't illegal until the NHL decided we better put this horse back in the barn and make it illegal. And hopefully we can get Frankie to talk about that a little bit when we have him on the pod because, again, a lot of people like these were all within the rules. It was just them looking at the rule book and saying, ooh, I can make that work for me. It wasn't cheating. It was just being ahead of the curve on those types 100%. Of things. And it was freaking brilliant, man.
One more on the inner belt is, and you guys touched on it with Cam, the Hockey Shop, thehockeyshop.com. In the gear segment, if you wear an inner belt, do you really default to being untucked then?
No, I wouldn't say so. You don't have to, because honestly, by wearing an inner belt and having that barrel shape around it, you actually create a fair amount of room to tuck.
Okay.
Now that
I've done both. I've done both.
Yeah, you can do both that way. I will say sometimes the clips on the sides of the belt where the belt attaches to the pants can limit how, like if you've got a really long chest protector, you can't necessarily get it all the way in for the tuck, but you can still definitely do both.
I've done inner belt and suspenders. Suspenders sort of hold everything down in terms of the chesty, and then the inner belt holds the pants up in a more comfortable way. So, yeah.
So the suspenders basically are doing the opposite of what that whole effect we were talking, like holding it down when we were talking about when they did it.
More holding the chest a little tighter because it tends to bag out with the big beer belly. So there's that air gap I got to pull in with the suspenders.
I know that one.
It's a beer league thing.
You and I are speaking the same language. Like when you skate by the glass and you go, what is that? And then the next time you make a mental note and you're like, next time I've got to find a way to get that thing taken care of because that air pocket is not.
Jared, I don't know. We're getting selfies from you out riding the bike in the desert. You're getting ready for the Tour de France. You don't have any sort of beer league belly, my friend. No way. Nice try.
Downhill with the wind. That's my exercise. That's the way I look at it. Fascinating. I love listening to Cam and Woody, and then I had these questions about some of these gear segments about the new equipment and different things that I haven't necessarily experienced. I'm a suspender guy, so I've never done this inner belt though. I do know goaltenders from that era of the Ziggy era who didn't use anything, inner belt or suspenders. The pants were so big that they just stayed in one spot, and you were it was like an ocean in there. Before they tightened up the rules.
What if I told you that after they tightened up the rules, I once saw a goaltender with an inner belt win a Stanley Cup? We'll leave it at that. We'll leave that one at that.
Okay. Well, look at other potential ways to take advantage of the goaltending world. And one of those right now is coaching. And we've seen a couple of teams expand their goaltending department. And this doesn't happen overnight, as you will hear in our feature interview presented by Sense Arena, but the Calgary Flames have adjusted how they are going to deal with goaltenders in their system. And this is brought to you by Sense Arena, guys.
And a perfect little tie-in there before we get to Jordan Segale and Jason LaBarbera. Sense Arena, obviously the virtual reality training tool that we've been talking about here on the In Goal Radio podcast for a good 6 weeks now, Hutch. Full review up online and unlocked for anyone to read at ingoalmag.com. Detailed overview of how it works, why it can work for you, how to set it up, how to navigate it. Really well done job by Hutch. Really in-depth review. But interestingly enough, both of these coaches are in the process of maybe getting a little experience with the Sense Arena, because the Calgary Flames goalie, David Rittich, is one of the customers and one of their newer clients on the pro end who's been using this to sort of augment his training when he can't get on the ice. And we've heard from guys right up to pro level, right up to the NHL, about how good this tool is, this virtual reality tool is for tracking and for hand mechanics. And David Rittich is a guy who's using that. And Jason LaBarbera right now is waiting on 3 headsets, hopefully to be delivered in the next few hours, to help the Hockey Canada goalies get through their mandatory quarantine before they get back on the ice here. These kids are stuck in their hotel rooms, and what better way to get ready to play a big tournament than to have a little virtual reality and actually stop some pucks. So I heard the kids were quite excited about the opportunity that was coming, and I know the other countries are taking advantage of it. I saw a couple of German goaltenders training with Sense Arena on social media today. I'm pretty sure that the Czech team has at least one set, maybe multiple sets, because each kid is stuck in his own room. So that's the downside right now. You can't just have one, but certainly it's a tool that they're using at the World Juniors to help these kids stay busy, stay active, stay stopping pucks through virtual reality. And it's a tool that I think everyone else can use as well, Hutch.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an incredible tool, and we really enjoyed getting the opportunity to put it through its paces. And to, honestly, if you take some time and read the review, we were pretty upfront about some of the limitations because it's not perfect yet. And some suggestions for the company that I know that they've taken note of and are working on for the next release of the software. But an incredible tool. And one of the things that I made plain in the review, guys, is that what are you comparing this to as a tool? It's not replacing getting on the ice, although we know some of these guys in quarantine are using it in that sense. It's replacing what are your other off-ice tools to work on your tracking, to work on your hand-eye coordination, to work on reading the game. Really, we haven't had very much at all as goaltenders off the ice until now. And this is a quantum leap forward in giving goaltenders at home the ability to do something to improve the game. And as we noticed in our testing, as my son Matty noticed in our testing, as the LA Kings goaltenders reported to us through Bill Ranford, use the Sense Arena and it makes a difference in your tracking on the ice the next day. So we're really excited about the tool and looking forward to continuing to work with it as we go forward.
Is that the same Matty that tried to catch Woody and I in a big rules violation earlier?
Yeah, the one who was right when he looked, because he's a Hockey Canada referee
wondering.
And he was right about his rule book. So I was just the wrong one about the NHL. So I'm the guy in the middle.
Hey, do you imagine what a lot of people used to do is like throw a tennis ball against the wall, bounce it against the wall, and have it come off at a different
for
angle.
hours.
You might get some for hours. That would have just wrecked those hotel rooms in Edmonton in the bubble after 4 days. So Sense Arena is actually saving the bricks and the mortar.
It should be sponsored by the Marriott or something
inside the bubble. So thank you to Sense Arena for doing that, because that would have been a mess. But it's a real tool and something that Jason LaBarbera and Team Canada are taking advantage of. And then Jason, after he's done with the World Junior Championship, is going to return to Calgary, where he lives. And he has a new job waiting for him, as Calgary has announced that Jason LaBarbera is the new NHL goalie coach. Jordan Sigalet has been elevated to oversee the goaltending department of the Calgary Flames. So real big happenings right now with the Calgary Flames, Woody, with their goaltending department. And it's a trend.
Yeah, I know it's a trend that, a lot of people, we tease the fact we're going to have Francois Allaire on the podcast in the next couple of weeks. Obviously, the Florida Panthers with Roberto Luongo taking over the director role, and Francois as a special consultant announced this, I think, last week, something similar in their department. They'll still have Robbie Tallis in the NHL. They'll have Leo Luongo as a development role, AHL goalie coach, and some scouting. They're looking to expand their scouting. A couple months before that, the Arizona Coyotes, Brian DeCord was announced as the director of goaltending. They've got an NHL goalie coach, an AHL goalie coach, and a goalie scout already in place. So a nice big department there. And, obviously this is something that to me dates back when I see this type of department structure. To me, the start of this is Mitch Korn, 27-18 with the Washington Capitals. Had hired Scott Murray in the AHL role before that, and sort of worked with him and nurtured him and brought him up to the NHL role. They hired Alex Westlin, another highly regarded goalie coach who actually was a finalist for the New Jersey Devils NHL job just this summer. So really quality goalie coach there, and really built out a department, and they won a cup the first year. So from there, Korn leaves, goes to the Islanders, where he's continued in that role for the past couple of years with them. But to me, that's where it all started, and it's nice to see other teams following suit. As we talked about, the Canucks had it for 1 year with Kluche and Clark before Dan Kluche left. That hasn't been filled since, but Arizona this summer, Florida last week, Calgary this week. The New Jersey Devils have been operating with the same type of structure, if not formalized or announced, for most of this summer. This is an exciting day for goaltending, and even better for us here at In Goal is a couple of guys that we've had on as guests before, and Jason LaBarbera and Jordan Sigalet, and nice enough on the day it was announced to join us to talk about how this is going to work and some of their philosophies about goaltending with our audience.
And a reinforcement to how tapped in Kevin Woodley is and David Hutchinson is with the world of goaltending, because In Goal magazine was ahead of the curve on the reporting of this, and Kevin is In Goal on Twitter was ahead of the curve in just bringing everybody to light what was going on with the Calgary Flames. So Jason LaBarbera, Barbs, is now working with the Calgary Flames goalies. Jordan Sigalet, Siggy, is overseeing the department and will take on a couple of different roles when it comes to goaltending. And Kevin Woodley, Woody, is the man that caught up to them on the day of the big announcement. This is our feature interview on In Goal Radio, the podcast, presented by Sense Arena VR.
So this is a special treat for our audience here at In Goal. We don't do this often where we have more than one guy on the air, but the opportunity to get, 2/3 of the Calgary Flames' new goalie department. What are we calling it, guys? Did you guys go goalie excellence, Siggy, or did you just call it a goalie department? We got Jordan Sigalet, the Calgary Flames' new director of goaltending, and Jason LaBarbera, the Calgary Flames' new NHL goaltending coach. We don't have Thomas Spear, but I wanted to mention him, your AHL development goalie coach, and another guy that we're big fans of. So let's just start with you, Siggy. How did this all come to be?
Yeah, it's something myself and Brad Trelevian have been talking about for probably a year and a half now, and I got LaBarbera in the loop right away, just to see what his interest would be, because he was a guy we wanted to target, and he had interest all along. It was just making it happen and the timing of it. So when the season ended, we kind of started bringing it up again, and obviously with the pandemic, everything was kind of on hold. And once we kind of saw a light at the end of the tunnel for a return to play here, I think things started to snowball and move forward. And Tree reached out to us, and he gave me the option a year and a half ago, if we ever did this, would I want to stay in my same role or take on the director of goaltending role? And I was excited to make the switch, and, it all went down the last few days. So we're excited to have Jason on board, and, I'm excited to learn from him and work with him.
Jason, for you, this must be just an ideal circumstance. I mean, it's home, right? And you've been working there with the Calgary Hitmen. We obviously talked to you during that Hockey Canada goalie conference this summer. And you get to stay home and work in the National Hockey League. How excited are you that when this all came about?
Yeah, obviously very excited and just grateful for the opportunity. Not many guys get that opportunity to be able to stay at home and coach with your NHL team the same city you live in, right? So very lucky and very fortunate and grateful to have the opportunity from Jordan and Brad and when you coach and if you want to move up and progress, usually what happens is you have to move. And, I have a young family and I'm able to stay at home for the next 3 years at least. And very, very excited about it.
Now, what's the key? Maybe we'll start with you, Siggy. You can, how do you make this work? We've seen other teams. I mean, obviously I think in my mind, the Capitals, the year they won the cup with Mitch Korn as the director, was the sort of the start of this shift. We've seen some other teams this summer announce a goaltending department. I was joking about the Panthers and calling it a goaltending excellence department. I loved that name, by the way. The Coyotes did it earlier in the summer. What will make this work? What's the most important thing to how this structure works for you guys?
I think a lot of it we're going to learn on the go here, but we're all going to sit down when Jason gets out of the bubble there and really go over the fine details of everything. But I think it's going to be a learning process. But I think one of the keys is for Jason now as a sounding board and myself. I know doing this job for the last 6 years, there's times you feel like you're on an island and don't have anyone to really bounce things off of. So I know if I was in that role, it'd be nice to have that. So I think that's going to be great to bounce some stuff off each other. And then for myself, just to be a lot more in depth in the draft. It's really tough to take on all the draft scouting and free agency scouting when you're in the daily grind of an NHL job. And so to have more eyes and in depth in that, I think that's going to be huge. And then just getting out, when Thomas Spear takes off to Kansas City, that'd be a good time for me to go into Stockton and have my time there, and just going to have more eyes and more hands on the goalies in our system.
Now, you guys, obviously every goalie's different. We've had this conversation over the years about how you coach goalies has to be different depending on the goaltender. But do you sort of develop a philosophy where you're all on the same page? Maybe not about exact specifics and you must do it this way, but do you think there becomes sort of a common language and some common foundations as a group that you apply top to bottom throughout this? Like, is it important to make sure that goalies, like you said, whether they're in Stockton or in Calgary, are getting the same message no matter who they're talking to?
Yeah, I think that's really important. And, knowing Jason and getting to know him and, working in the same building there for the last 4 years, we've talked a lot about, the position and our beliefs and what we see in each guy. So we're on the same page in a lot of things already. And then obviously working with Thomas last year down in Stockton, you're always hiring guys you share the same philosophies with. So, and I don't think there's any cookie cutter approach to any goalie, but you want to be on the same page with a lot of things, which I think we are.
Okay, now Jason, you're in the bubble, as Siggy mentioned, because you're there with Hockey Canada. I gotta ask how, like, little aside here, what's that been like? What's that experience been like? And like, you're gonna get out of there hopefully as a gold medal winner, and then straight into an NHL season. This is kind of whirlwind, no?
Yeah, it has been a little bit for sure. It's a unique situation, no doubt. Obviously, you don't expect to be in your hotel room for 19 full days, before the World Junior Championship. So, it is what it is. I mean, we're all dealing with what's going on in the world. Like it's affecting everybody. So, everyone's in the same boat in that sense. So, there's obviously a lot going on, trying to get the guys ready from your hotel room. And then once we get back on the ice, get them ready for when actually, the games happen and stuff. And then obviously, now adding this to it, trying to get ready for when I get back to Calgary and get to work with the Flames and Jordan and the rest of the staff, which I'm super excited about.
What, and maybe both of you can answer this one, and Siggy, you can go first. Like, we make jokes about, hey, Jason's been stuck in the hotel room 4 straight days now in quarantine, 14 days before that. But really, the world's kind of changed on us here in the past 8 months, 9 months. And the access we have, like, you can't do things live, a lot of video technology. Are there any lessons that you guys have taken away, Siggy, that you first, maybe that in terms of how you do things, whether it's with goaltenders as individuals and how you use video, or looking at goaltenders for a draft, like that you see maybe continuing going forward even?
You know what? I've really enjoyed doing a lot of the scouting on video. I know it's not the same as being live, but I find you're getting way more replays now. I've watched so many more games there over in Russia with drafting Danil Chechelev. And, there's so many different tools you can use now to get those games. And, they're starting at all times of the day with the time changes, but just watching it through video with the replays and just getting to see the guys a little closer, it's helped a lot. So just using different programs like Instat and Sportlogic, and there's so many tools out there now that allow you to do that, because they've taken away the luxury of in-person scouting, obviously, but we've been lucky to have those tools.
What about for you, Jason? Like right now, like, is there lessons here in terms of how you're managing these guys who are stuck in their hotel rooms, can't even visit you and yours, and helping them prepare for a stage as big as this? Like, It's a position that's always about learning. I'm just wondering if there's any takeaways, as odd as this experience is, that you might be able to apply going forward.
Yeah, I mean, like having access to stuff like Instat and Sport Logic has been a blessing. Again, not being able to be on the ice with these guys. So, something that I've done is just sending guys, I ask them every day, what NHL goalie video do you guys want? So whether it's, Markstrom or whether it's, Carter Hart or past World Juniors. So Joel Hofer last year. So here's all Joel Hofer's clips from last year. Here's Carter Hart's clips from 3 years ago. Here's, Michael DiPietro's clips from 2 years ago. So things like that, I think are valuable. They can visualize themselves in that situation, in those moments. They can learn from those guys. They can, whether they want just their actual clips of the games or, like Devin Levi, for example, he wants the full game. So he wants to take the whole scope of the game and watch the game and sort of get a feel, for the game, because these guys haven't played hockey, since March. So they've done a good job of taking initiative in that way. And then we've worked together in that sense of working, sending them video through that, and then just communicating on a daily basis, like checking in, having phone calls, text messages, so that part's been good, because you still got to build that relationship, and you still got to get them to trust you. You don't get to see them on a daily basis, but there's other ways around it.
How much do you guys use video? It's funny to hear you talk about that. Like, we talk about reads, right? And I think for the longest time, like reads and I used to think that was innate, right? Like something that you either had as a goalie or you didn't. Some guys read the game well, some not so much. Is video a tool that can help guys learn to read the game better? It's obviously something we've, shameless plug at InGoal, we've used with the pro reads, where we have the NHL guys walk us through their plays. With that in mind, do you see value there to, using video as a tool for, okay, are you looking for whether this guy's left or right-handed, those types of things? Do you see it as a thing you can use to teach?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think it's valuable, right? You obviously can't put yourself, in the goalie's shoes or in his mind of what he's reading, but you can show them certain situations that might occur that might give them a little bit more information, so they can, when that situation does arise, they've got a little bit more info to give the right answer to whatever's going to happen on the ice. So, I think there's certainly, it's not the be all end all. Obviously, they need to still use their instincts and their natural, ability, but it also can help, give them more information and help educate them a little bit on certain situations.
Can it help, Siggy, for example, you guys have a new goaltender coming in this summer, a guy I know well here from Vancouver, and Jacob Markstrom, and frankly, one of the league's best over the past 2 years. Is there an adjustment period for him in terms of systems, what to expect from defensemen that you can help the transition with using video? Or do you really got to get into those games and understand, communication, when a guy's going to block a shot, when a guy's going to get out of the way, that type of thing? Do you need to be in games, or can you help sort of get him started using video?
I mean, nothing compares to games, but we've already started to do a lot just with, how we penalty kill, what he likes on the penalty kill, sitting down with our PK coach and our defensive coach, Ryan Huska, talking about how they played 2-on-1s in Vancouver versus how we play them in Calgary. And a lot of it's going to be built around, how he likes the team and defense to play in front of him. So, he's getting used to the guys already. We got about 25 guys in town, and he's been here for a week and on the ice for about 5 days after his quarantine. So, it's just getting to find out what he likes as a goalie, and sitting down with the rest of our staff to get on the same page. And then obviously when Jason gets back, it'll just transition right over to him.
So it sounds like it is a tool, at least, because I guess the one thing about this year, as strange as everything has been, there's not going to be exhibition games by the sounds of it, at least. And you guys, are going to have to jump right into this on the fly. Like, hey, Wilson, welcome to the NHL as a coach now, Barbs. Here you go. You got a few days. Everybody's got to be on the same page.
Yeah, no kidding, eh? No, it'll be good. Like, there's a great support staff there, obviously, with Jordan and the rest of the staff. I already know some of the assistant coaches on the staff as it is. So, hopefully it's a pretty seamless transition.
Okay, so you guys obviously built the relationship when Jason was working with the Calgary Hitmen in the same building. And obviously, I know emailing Jason in the past that I think the email, it's a team that the Flames own. So the email signature is calgaryflames.com on there. That relationship, do you guys have any history together before? Like I was looking and I'm like, you guys must have played each other at some point in the A way back in like the mid 2000s. No?
I don't even know. I know my brother knew his family pretty well. My older brother. I'm sure we crossed paths at some point. I was probably sitting on the bench though.
I know I played Vancouver Super Series with your brother one year when I was like 10. I remember that a long time ago, obviously. But and that year, I know Jordan was when he was in Victoria. My best buddy was on his team in Victoria, so I remember going out to Victoria the one year when they went on that playoff run, watching games at the old Victoria Arena there.
Okay, so now Siggy, you've been a coach for a while now. Barbs was still playing. I know you never crossed paths that way, but did you have to ever build a scouting report on Jason? Because that I want to see.
I had to delete all those out of the system.
Because you wouldn't want any of your goalies seeing them, or
I don't think Barbs would want to see it.
No, just shoot the puck.
Okay, chirps aside, it's interesting. You guys both talked about building relationships. Jason, you talked about that as much as the video work, that it's about building relationships and trust with these kids. It's something that Jordan's talked about a lot. So maybe I'll let you go first, Jason. It's clearly important. You don't need to restate that. But how do you go about that? I mean, you worked with so many different goalie coaches during your playing career. What did you like from a goalie coach, and how have you incorporated that into how you work? Like, what will be the most important thing for Jason LaBarbera to quickly build a relationship with Jacob Markstrom when you take over, or when you take that and start in that role with Calgary?
I think just being honest with them right from the start. I think, talking to them on a daily basis, getting to be yourself, getting them to obviously getting them to trust you is a super important thing. So I just think that the daily communication and how you approach them, how you talk to them, whether it's practice, off the ice, away from the rink, during the game, whatever it is, and really just trying to understand them. At the end of the day, and I think it's about them more than, it's not about me. It's about them, and getting to know the things that they like, the things that they want. And if things aren't going well, then there's a time to put your foot down sometimes and say, hey, like, let's get back to this. And being able to go about it that way, I think, is super important.
What about you, Jordan? How do you get started? You're going through this process right now with Jacob, and like, how did you initiate that process to sort of get things off on the right foot?
I've become an expert at this because I think I've done it 6 years in a row. I feel like we have a new goalie every season. So, no, with Jacob, it was kind of nice. It was easy to break the ice because my younger brother was over playing in his hometown. So they had spent some time together, I think, out for a few drinks. So that was an easy icebreaker. And, I think a big thing is just, letting those guys know and showing that you have their backs, and you're going to bat for them when the time's right. Just earning their trust that way, and, just making them feel important, doing things, going out of your way to, go above and beyond. Like, I think it was important that year we signed Cam Talbot. I know there's been some stories out there about it, that I drove like 6.5 hours each direction from Columbus, Ohio, to Ontario to, just watch him train for a day and take him and his goalie coach out for dinner. It's little things like that, show you care, and, show that you want them to be successful.
How have you guys seen the game change? And Jason, obviously you're seeing it more directly at the CHL level. And obviously now working with the World Juniors, especially this year, it's going to be just a loaded tournament in terms of talent, a lot of NHL talent there right now. And you, Jordan, maybe we'll start with you in the NHL in terms of what you're doing with your goalies and the types of chances that they're facing. How has that evolved and changed? Am I right in saying it's a lot more east-west now? And how you can't just say, hey guys, the game's going east-west more, be faster. Like, has your approach evolved with that?
The big, obviously the game's gotten so much faster, and I think teams' power plays have just gotten more elite. So, There's way more scoring chances. It's a lot more wide open. I find with the league being so young now, there's a lot more mistakes. Half your defensemen could be forwards. They're always jumping up in the rush, so you're seeing a lot more odd man rushes. I think the biggest adjustment with all the guys now is mostly just the consistency of their depth and not getting sucked in on the rush. I find guys that are over aggressive now, they're just getting eaten alive a little bit. So the guys that, have high hockey sense and can read the shot and play well, they can play a little bit deeper and still track that puck and, still have success. So I think that's the biggest thing right now in the NHL today.
I think one of the biggest things we're missing in the NHL that you guys would have had, especially Jason, when you were playing, was a defensive defenseman. Like they're a disappearing breed, and yet goaltenders just absolutely love those guys. What are you seeing? Because this is the next generation of shooters that you're working with now, Jason, or working against, I guess. That skill that Siggy just talked about, that natural skill, the deception on some of these releases, like you see this just continuing to evolve in terms of the equations getting a little tougher for goaltenders to solve as we move forward?
Yeah, for sure it is. I mean, the evolution of the player has evolved a ton over the last few years, and they finally have. I always joke like they're so far behind the times of a goalie. As goalies, we're always trying to work on our games and our skill sets, and you spend the summers just working on your individual skills, where players would just show up and play 4-on-4, and it was just about getting in shape and feeling the puck. And now they've got all these skills developments and skills camps and all these things now. So yeah, you're constantly trying to stay ahead of the curve in that sense, for sure. They are getting a little bit smarter. Obviously, they're understanding things a little bit better. They're young players now want so much more information. There's just so much out there available to them. So, a lot of times, you're trying to beat guys away when they want to come out for goalie sessions, because they want to come out and they want to learn. It's a good thing for your team, but obviously as a goalie coach, you've got to try and stay ahead of that a little bit. So it's it's always a work in progress. You're constantly trying to evolve and learn and get better. And again, that's why I think this situation for us in Calgary is going to be great, because you're going to have guys that you can really rely on and help. You can discuss different ideas and work through those processes of that stuff, instead of, like Jordan said earlier, just being stuck on an island by yourself trying to figure it out.
No, I always love the goalies. I've always got time for the goalies that are the same way. They want to, they're always looking for new information, always looking for ways to get better. But sometimes that's not a good thing. And I know there are guys who sometimes they get consumed by always trying to change rather than sticking with a foundation. Where do you draw that line? Have you seen that, either one of you, in goalies that you've worked with in the past, where it's like, yeah, they want more information, but sometimes you're probably thinking to yourselves like, God, just go out and play. Maybe a little less info. How do you handle a situation like that? Have you seen it before?
Yeah, you always get that. It's usually when a guy's struggling a little bit, he thinks he has to change something. I've noticed it more with guys tinkering with their equipment than anything, and instead of just sticking what's made them successful. They've got four sets of pads in their stall because they're in a bit of a slump and they're trying out different sets of gear. So it's just having a conversation and saying, you got here for a reason, and tinkering with your equipment's not going to make the biggest difference in the world. And then on the other side of it, you get the guys overthinking too much, and that's the last thing you need is that in the back of your mind. So it's having a sit down conversation and just trying to get them to stick what's made them successful to get there.
Well, Jason's going to learn this when he's in Calgary. So if they have 4 sets of equipment, the rule of thumb is to make them stick with one, Jason, and send the other 3 over to the in-goal offices.
There you go. But it's true, right? Guys get bored sometimes, and they want to try different things, and they want to tinker, and they want to do all these things, and it's boring doing the same thing all the time, same thing over and over again. But that same thing works, so why change it? And sometimes I think we can, either the goalie or goalie coach or just the goalie world in general can overcomplicate things instead of just keeping it simple. Like, simple works sometimes, and it's okay.
It's a little harder for me to sell articles on simple, but I'm working on it.
I know.
Well, let me ask you one last one, guys, and I'll let you go. Practice. We talking about practice. Jason, you and I remember talking about this when you were playing. Like there were times where you would get aggressive in practice earlier in your career because you wanted coaches to see you stopping pucks in practice. But if you weren't playing a lot, those were habits that you may not necessarily want in your game when you did get to play in a game. We know that practice can sometimes not be great for goaltenders just in terms of the way it's structured. You guys have your time with the goalies, but sometimes as the flow drills get going, it's not necessarily goalie friendly. We've heard advice one way or the other over the years on how to manage that. What would be yours? Obviously, you guys will be working together to try and mitigate that. But hey, the forwards need their fun time too. So how would you advise goalies, especially younger goalies for you, Jason, in the junior levels? How do you manage that? How do you make sure you're still getting something out of your game and you're still sending the right message to coaches without cheating?
Yeah, the one thing I always remember Sean Burke telling me was he's like, I don't care if you get lit up in practice. He's like, you got to stick to your structure and your technique and doing things right in practice. And I think that's important, but there's times I think, and you've got to pick your spots. There's some times where, this forward drill is outrageous and it's not fun when you're getting scored on. So whatever, let loose, and go outside your box a little bit. I think it's important sometimes to pick your spots, but you got to be consistent, I think, in the sense of sticking to what works for you. Even if the drill itself is outrageous, you still got to have that, the technique, like play it like you would play in a game, even though it's not game related, even though it's not necessarily a game like situation, still play it like you would in a game.
And I guess, Jordan, from a coaching standpoint, the key is making sure that the rest of the staff understands that this can be a challenge for goaltenders and that pucks are going to go in that way and that they shouldn't be judging a guy's performance based on drills like that.
Yeah, no, I agree with Barb's completely on what he said there. You got to practice the way you're going to play. You can't just start getting aggressive in practice and then try and go back to the way you want to play in a game. You need that consistency and that routine. So, our coaches are pretty good in Calgary where they'll sit down before practice and ask, what drills are good and bad. And times we'll even bring out a third goalie and let him hop in for all the terrible goalie drills. So, seems like you'll go through practice some days and you'll have a great practice, then you'll end with some half-ice 3-on-3 game and just lose all your confidence. So usually if we had something like that, we'd just do a goalie drill at the end of practice just to get the guy feeling the puck again and feeling good. And it's just making sure those guys leave the rink feeling good about their game every day.
Okay, so I promised that was the last one, but you've given me the idea for one more because this is what I do. Barb's is laughing in the corner there. Practice goalies. You just introduced that to me, and obviously we don't know how this season's going to look, and you might get a third goalie just to have three around with COVID and all that's going on and quarantines. You see something? Do you see that as something long term that would have benefit for the goalies? I always go back to Doobie, the first year in Minnesota and playing 38 straight, and he always said, I played 38 straight games because we had two other guys there. Nicky Backstrom was still there. Darcy Kemper was there. He'd come in, he'd do his goalie work, he'd take maybe one or two rush drills, and then he'd get off. And he played 38 straight games that way. And it always blew me away that here we are 5-6 years later, no teams have adopted the philosophy of, we're not able to play the number one guy as much as we want because we keep wearing them out in practice. So could we actually see a practice goalie? And are you volunteering, Barbs, to be that guy this year?
I think I think you're going to see it happen. And I think it works as long as that third guy is a guy that knows he's the third guy. Like I went through a whole season with 3 goalies and each guy thought they were the guy. So it was tough. But if you have a designated guy that knows he's the third guy, I think it would work great. Again, you have these guys, like I'm sure Markstrom would be a little stubborn. He loves to be in the net. He loves to work. He loves to earn the respect of his teammate by being out there in practice. So you're going to have the odd guy that's not going to like it because they want to be out there. But I think that's where you kind of got to put your foot down when guys are tired and need that break. And we have a lot of local college guys around that we bring out from University of Calgary and SAIT and all over here.
So, Barbs, it sounds like you're off the hook. Nobody's throwing you in the net, so that's the good news. Do you see the advantages potentially of that type of situation? And I guess the other key thing is we all know forwards don't want to shoot on plugs, so it's not like you're inviting Kevin Woodley out to get lit up. You've got a decent roster of goalies there to sort of get in the net and take those shots.
Yeah, no, for sure. If you can find ways to manage your starters' energy levels on a daily basis, I think it's a great idea. And you're right, because, just like we talked about earlier, your practice habits and stuff. And if you're a guy that plays a lot and you jump into practice and now your practice is an hour and 15 minutes, it's really hard for you to be consistent with your habits on it because you're just trying to get through the practice. And so sometimes that's where your energy levels go, but also your habits can go a little bit too, because you're just trying to survive instead of actually getting something out of it. So if there's days where, my energy, like I'm tired, I played last night, I got to play tomorrow, and we're having an hour-long practice. Well, I don't need to see this many shots. I felt good. I feel good about my game. I did my goalie session already. I can get off the ice, have a third guy come in who's a decent goalie. I think it's a great idea.
Excellent stuff. Hey, listen, Jason, best of luck with the World Junior Championships coming up here and with getting the guys out of their hotel room, back on the ice and ready to go by the time this all starts. It's going to be a fascinating tournament and one with, I think, the whole hockey world watching while we wait for the NHL to start. So best of luck there. Congratulations on that. And also congratulations on the new gig. And to you too, Jordan, congratulations on the director role. And thank you both for, taking the time to join me today and kind of fill our in-goal audience on how this is all going to work. We're excited to hear from you and excited to see how it pans out.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. I'll talk soon.
That was outstanding. And, you guys mentioned different things that coaches have been forced to use to adapt to this new world. Kevin, think about it. Like, you're not getting the two of them on this day. LaBarbera's in the World Junior Championship isolation without all of the streaming and the Zoom calls and everything that we've come to accept as normal. A year ago, you wouldn't be able to pull this off. So we've kind of used the lessons learned in the pandemic to our advantage here by that interview that you did.
Yeah, no, and absolutely right. Now I think I could get Siggy because I did time it well. I timed it around his kid's bath and bedtime, and he's
Good.
got 4, so he didn't mind taking a little break there to talk to us for a few minutes there. Matter of fact, if we'd cut that interview off a little earlier, he might have ended up having to help. So he was happy to stick around and talk with me and Barbs for an extra couple of minutes. Just don't tell his wife.
Sounds like a Woody move.
Was he saying just one more? Just Kevin, tell me you've got one more question. The goaltending department idea that we've referenced a couple of times, it makes sense and it can really help your organization. We all agree on that. But I also think you need the right mix to make it work. It's not just, I'm going to throw 4 or 5 goaltenders as coaches in a room. You got to have real defined rules for everybody and a defined philosophy. Wouldn't you, Hutch?
I think you do. And I've been spending a little time thinking about this, as we all have over the last few days, as we've seen this rise recently. And, one of the common opinions is, well, it's about time. Why wasn't this done a long time ago, with it being the most important position in the game? But really, if we look back 15, 20 years, were there enough people ready to be NHL goalie coaches that we could put a team of 3 or 4 guys together at that sort of level? So I think it speaks to the growth in the profession and the number of qualified people that are now able to lend a hand with each one of these teams. And I was fascinated, as Siggy was talking about it being so important that he and Barbs are on the same page and that they think the same way. And that makes sense to a point. I'm going to be fascinated to see how all these different departments evolve over the next 5-10 years. It's going to be a really interesting study to look back on, because being all on the same page and having the same philosophy will be really important to have sort of an integrated approach throughout the organization. You want to know that your prospects are following the same sort of pathway as the guys at the NHL level. However, I think it's also been shown time and again in large organizations that the most progress is made when you have differing opinions sitting around the table. So let's not forget that you also have the ability now to add different voices who they're probably going to be on the same page philosophically to an extent, but it's great that you can have those different voices now when you start problem solving for people. And I think Siggy alluded to that as well when he said, he's sort of a man on an island until now. And now having that ability to share with somebody else, I think is really going to be important for everybody's growth. And it's an exciting time.
And I was going to say, the one I think of there, because we're obviously focused on Calgary, and Florida got a lot of attention last week, but the Arizona Coyotes and the announcement with Brian Decord, and how the key for Decord was that they called it a director of goaltending operations. And so it was really important to him that there was no sort of perception that he was above everyone and he was dictating. He was sort of guiding, managing, providing resources for everybody else within the department, as opposed to dictating to. And I think it's important when you talk to Mitch, when you talk to Siggy, when you talk to Roberto, these guys all say the same thing. It's not about me being at the top, being a boss. It's about developing that exact thing you're talking about, Hutch, where we're all on the same page, but nobody's dictating to anyone else. It's an open discussion till we come to an agreement on how this should look, how it should work. And what I love about what Decord brings to it, and because you can get stuck in your organization and lose that access to outside voices. We saw it with the New Jersey Devils for years. When Lou Lamoriello was there, their coaches were not allowed to talk to other people, and they atrophied. They will tell you that they atrophied in a position that evolves constantly. They didn't maintain those relationships outside. They were stuck in their bubble, and everything changed around them. Mitch Kornitz, one of the reasons that he still coaches kids in the summer, not just because he loves to coach, but because all the guest coaches, and they bring things and ideas that he can continue to grow from. And so you build a department to have multiple voices, but it doesn't mean you stagnate and only listen to the people within that department. You still look for outside things. And Decord, in his role at Stop It Goaltending, it's such a good fit because he's always got all these other people around him that are bringing ideas, bringing technologies, bringing resources, bringing tools. Sense Arena, right? There's something that he's at the forefront of and ahead of other organizations. The Coyotes, along with the Kings, will be sort of ahead of this curve because Brian's involved with that for his business, and it benefits the Coyotes. So you're absolutely right, Hutch. This can't become now we just have 4 guys on an island. It has to really be about guys that are able to now branch out. And Siggy will have the opportunity as he goes and scouts and looks at goalies in other places to have conversations with more people and get new ideas and continue to expand everybody's options, while at the same time developing a philosophy that can, yes, evolve, but has some continuity for the goaltenders who come through your system from the top to the bottom.
And from breaking new ground with this approach to going back to our roots. And Francois Allaire is going to be a guest on In Goal Radio, the podcast. And we have Bernie Parent, whose first pseudo goalie coach was his partner when he was with the Toronto Maple Leafs. And he learned off of the man that was his mentor in Jacques Plante. So we have a couple of fascinating guests who will turn back the clock a little bit coming up in the next few weeks.
Yeah, we're dialing it up as we lead up to episode 100. We had a fantastic conversation with Bernie Parent, and you led that brilliantly, Darren. I was always fascinated by his relationship with Jacques Plante. Jacques himself, one of the first goaltending coaches in the National Hockey League when he was brought down at Philadelphia to work with Bernie. And then of course Francois Allaire, who is the godfather of goaltending coaches, the first coach who should find his name in the Hall of Fame, as Kevin has been at that podium for many years now. Incredible to have both these guys, and just a great opportunity to learn over the next few weeks here with In Goal.
We're working on one more. We don't want to jinx it, but it's a doozy, and we're working on that as well as we try and ramp things up to celebrate the new year with some really big guests in episode 100.
Episode 102 calendar years, boys. Like it was a fun journey that we set off on 2 years ago.
Remember when we started and we read all that stuff about how most podcasts don't make it through 5 episodes?
Yeah.
We thought we were big time by 10.
Now we're just old.
Now it's just a habit.
Yeah. And we want to thank all the listeners, podcasting loyalists around the world of goaltending. And it is truly a world of goaltending. We know you're listening in Europe. We know you're listening all over Russia, in the Southern Hemisphere, in Australia. We see those podcast downloads. So it's great, along with everybody here in North America. You're along with the ride right with us, and we consider you in the co-pilot seat. Although you don't throw us curveballs like we threw each other tonight with the illegal curve combination. Thanks to Jason LaBarbera, Jordan Sigalet. Good luck to Barb's inside the bubble and to Jordan in his new role. We can't wait to follow the progress and the expansion of the goaltending departments around the National Hockey League. And thanks to Woody and Hutch. One more episode before Christmas. One more chance to remind everybody about last-minute gift ideas. We'll talk to you next week on In Goal Radio, the podcast.